וכי נפשי es Hashem.
Page 76, it's basically the page that we complete in Mitzvah Hashem, Perek Shvi, chapter 7. After the previous Mishnayot, the last one, speaks about the chiyuv, the obligation, the responsibility of carrying on Shabbat. You have to carry something that has the shi'ur, that has something that people usually carry for their purpose of use. Now we need to go to a detail specific over the size of the shi'ur. What exactly involved in a sense of measurement, what people usually use, what's the minimum measurement, can we combine several items together? That's basically the end. Here we're zooming in with a relationship to ma'achal be'ema, food that used to feed an animal. Again, what is the minimum size, and can you combine different size of food? Hamotzi teven kimlo pi fara. We're speaking about the measurement of minimum measurement for an animal. Someone who carries out straw in the measure that it's equal to a cow mouthful. So he said, why? Because this type of food they're feeding a cow, and not, Rabbi Yonatan said, not smaller than that one. And he said, Kimlo pi gamal, eitza, kimlo pi gamal. If the measures that determines liability for eitza, it's equivalent to camel mouthful. This is basically someone who cross road food. You have to bring a greater amount, not only by the size of the camel, but also it's a crossroad. The GEMARA later explain it. Amir kimlo pitale, a measure for a grass is equivalent to the goat mouthful, which again is smaller than the lamb. Va'asavim, right, did I skip something? Ears grain equivalent to lamb's mouthful, grass equivalent to goat's mouthful, yes. Alei shum, ve'ale betzalim, garlic leaves and onion leaves. Lachim kri grogeret, if it's a liquid, moist, in a side of dry fig bark. That's a side of human food. So that's basically the big leaf at the top of the onion and garlic, in order to pull it out from the ground.
Call them, garlic greens, or
yes.
Yep.
So they said yeveshim kemo pligdi, if they're dry, it's equivalent to a goat mouthful. ואין מצטרפין זה עם זה מפני שלא שבו בשיעוריהם, which means if a person takes a half size of a mouthful of cow and half size of mouthful of camel of eitza, so it's not going to it is exempt, if Eretz Yisrael said. So they said here, you see the idea that you cannot join together with one another because they are not equal in their measurement. A little from here, a little from there, it's not equivalent. It's a different shiurim, it's a different size. Now we elaborate. Number one, of the idea of eitza. First question, my eitza. What does that mean when you use the word eitza? אמר רב יהודה, תבן של מתני קטניות. It's a straw of types of legumes. So it's basically it's a good for the camel. It's a camel food, but not for cow. So in the Mishnah, it's something that is good also for cow. Here not. Ki ata Rav Dimi Amar, when Rav Dimi came, remember every time Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylon, he said, Hamutzi teven, kim lo pi para legamal. The mouth of a camel is larger than the cow. So if someone carries out a measure of straw equivalent to a cow mouthful for a camel, so it's, in a way, it's an insignificant measure. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayav. Rabbi Yochanan said is liable. Why? But because the measurement to make him Chayav liable is the mouthful of cow. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Amar Patur. He said he is exempt. Why? Because the measurement of a camel, in order to make it for him a liable, it's the mouthful of camel. Now it's a very interesting side note. באותה אמר רבי יוחנן, אחרי לצפרא אדרבי. In the evening, Rabbi Yochanan hold that way. He overnight slept and thought about it. In the morning, what happened?
Changed his mind.
Changed his mind and said that the motzi patu, that one who carries it, is exempt. Omar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said, Shapira v'adar. It's very good that Rabbi Yochanan changed his mind. Why? Daha lo chazei legamal. Because since that amount is not suitable for camel, it's not a measure, it's not enough, that teven, it's not. Because the whole purpose of carrying that, it's in order to feed a camel. So you only make that person carry liability if he carries something that feeds camel. If below than that, it's no liability for carrying less than that mouthful of camel. Abaye disagreed. Amar le Abaye responded to Rav Yosef, Adraba, quite the contrary. He said, Kid de me'ikara mistabra. I think it's just the opposite. That Rabbi Yochanan hold more than he thought earlier, that the one who carries it has liability. The hachazei lefara. Because it's good, it's suitable for a cow. So if it's good for a cow, which means it's enough to make him responsible, because there is a level, it's called teven, and that's good for para, and eitzah is good for the gamal. So it can be that whatever Rav Dimi said, according to that shmuah, what he heard, that Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish hold that someone who carry teven for the camel, so it has to be the mouthful of cow. So the Gemara accepted, because it's cow. It's, even though it's not good for a camel, it still carries amount. So the Gemara said it makes sense. Ela ki ata Ravin Amar, when Ravin, the great rabbi, came from Israel to Babylon, he said, Hamotzi teven kim lo pi para, one who carries out a measure equivalent to a cow, mouthful of straw for a camel. So he said, Legama, everyone agrees that what? That he's liable. Why? Because it's enough for the cow. So if he carries that measurement that you need, so he carries something by something that people does that. They do in such a way. The matzniim kamo, they do in such a way. כי פליגי, the real מחלוקת, disputation between רבי יוחנן וריש לקיש, במוציא עצה, כמלוף פי פרה, לפרה. If you make a mouth full of cow, for a cow. So עצה, it's not good for cow, only by force of circumstances good for a cow. But it's good for a camel. So usually the measurement in order to carry it's full mouth of camel. But if someone carries on purpose for the cow, now you enter the domain, Rashi said, of the machloket of Rabbi Yochanan ben Rish Lakish. Ve'ipcha itmar, and their opinion for liability and exemption, it's opposite to the way that Rav Dimi said, meaning according to Rav Dimi, when Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish have disputation, so always Rabbi Yochanan is the one who said liable and Rish Lakish exempt. And according to Ravin, it's just the opposite. Rabbi Yochanan amar patu, Rish Lakish amar chayav, which means Rabbi Yochanan exempt. Why? Because he said that the measurement for itzah in regard to carrying, it's only if the mouth full of camel. Rish Lakish amar chayav. Rish Lakish said that he is liable because it's good enough for the purpose of using for the cow mouthful. The measurement to make it obligatory, it's full mouth of cow, and even eitzah that it's not used for para for the cow, only in those circumstances. Rabbi Yochanan אמר פטור אכילה על ידי החק לא שמה אכילה, ריש לקיש אמר חייב אכילה על ידי החק שמה אכילה. Rabbi Yochanan hold that he is exempt. Why? Because he said that eating under duress, which means food that is not typically eaten but can be eaten if necessary, such as cow eating, is not considered eating. And Rish Lakish said he is liable because he holds that eating under duress is considering eating. So very interestingly, see here that according to halacha, which we're not going there, but just general statement, here we're going by the Rish Lakish. Right? And that's the opinion of the Rambam. And it's very interesting because by the entire Shas, we always go by, if it's a machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, we go by Rabbi Yochanan, excluding 3 times. So the truth is, the case of Mishna right away said that it's not Rish Lakish, here is Rav Oshaya. But anyway, that's the halacha. Achila l'idei achak shma achila. Which means you go by that measurement, meaning that when you're using a itzah for the purpose of a cow, it's considering a shiur chayav. Amir kimlo pitale. Learn that if it's a ear of grain, is equivalent to a lamb mouthful. Ve'atanya kigogeret. But we learn that is a dry fig block. So they said idi ve'idi chad shuru, which means both of them is liable because this lamb mouthful and that the dry fig bark are one, which means they have the same measure. It's no difference. Even the gogeret is more practical, but anyway, they use it for that because otherwise we don't know the reason for that. That's what Tosfot say. The Ritva hold that they just want to be practical in a sense of measurements. So that's the reason they mention all of this. So we continue the Mishnah, Alei Shum va'alei betzalim lachim ki grogeret v'iveshim kemlo pi hagdi. They said that garlic leaves and onions leaves, so if they are moist, it's equivalent to a dry fig bark, which means here we talk about measurement. So you have to know that these garlic leaves and onion leaves, if they are dry, the measure for liability is equivalent to a goat mouthful. So soon we understand that there are different level of gradation, but just let's finish that sugya. ואין מצטרפים זה עם זה מפני שלא שבו בשיעוריהם. You cannot combine them because the measurement is different.
Right.
אמר רבי יוסי בר חנינא, אין מצטרפים לחמור שבהם, אבל מצטרפים לקל שבהם. Which means, if you take the measurement, you have melo pigamal, the camel. Then you go to a cow, mouthful. Then you go to a gdi. Goats, goats.
Right,
go to taleh. Now, can you combine camel with taleh? It's not fair to combine them.
It's
so
like
you
comparing
said,
apples and oranges.
That's right. So you said, אבל מצטרפים לקל שבהם. So, but they join together with the substances among them whose status is more lenient, like an ear of grain. So, in other words, if someone has a taleh, lamb, mouthful of mixture of grass, which is more stringent, and an ear of grain, which is more lenient, then he's liable. So now the GEMARA asks a question of this klal, and they said, "V'chol de lo shavu b'shiura yomim mitztarfin." Do you going to tell me that if you have this type of measurement, that it's inequivalent in the measurement, and even something that is more chamur, more stringent, you complete something that it's lenient? I can show you in Tuma and Tara that it's not so. Because they said in the Tractate Calendar, they said in the Mishna, "Ve'atnana beged shlosha al shlosha, ve'asak arba'a al arba'a, ve'aor chamisha al chamisha, mapat shisha al shisha." So when we're talking about Tumat Maga, the Tuma by touching, so we said if you have 3 by 3 etzbaot, size of fingers, so we talk not orech, we talk rochav. So if you have 3 by 3, so what happened? So he said like that. He said if you have, let's say, a poor person, when you have a hole in his shirt or in his clothes, so he can use measure of 3 by 3 fingers to stitch it, to fill it up, right? However, when it's come to midras, when someone who's zav, we have the discharge, and he walk, so you're talking about yeshiva, sitting, alicha, walking, shchiva, lining, right? So 3 by 3 fingers, it's not enough. What you have to do is tfachim, right? That's the normal size. So he said, ותנא עלה הבגד והשק והאור, האור והמפץ מצטרפים זה עם זה. So if you have the garment and the sack, right, and the sack and the hide and the mat, so they join together with one another. ואמר רבי שמעון, מה טעם? Why usually you don't combine them? So why here they said that they combine them? It's because מפני שראויים להיטמא במושב. Because all the component materials are fixed to become ritually impure to the status of seat. So even people usually will not sit together in a for example, if you have this mirdat, this part of the donkey, so people put something in the place that is sitting, even from different thing. Why? Because for the donkey they don't care. It can be a clothes, right? But you can have, for example, or and tzemer, which is a rach and kashe, soft and hard. So they have mechane meshutav, they have some common together that you can combine it. But something that is chamur, and something is kal, something is lenient, something is stringent, you cannot combine them. Tama, the reason that you can combine them, because people usually use, or sometimes used to combine them both. They don't care if it's for the donkey. Aval ein ra'u letameh moshav. If people don't use it for that purpose, no. So you cannot have something that is chamur and something that's kal, you combine them together. So Amar Rava, so the Gemara responds and said, Rava said, just turn the page, 76b, Hachaname chazia ledugma. Here too, since these substances are suited to be piled together, right? When they combine, ledugma, you have a merchant, you have a store, and in the store is selling different type of food. Dugmaot mazoni, there are different kind of food. So he bringing at the window a different type of food that he's selling, so people can see what he has. Now, the issue is if there is a spot that is open for the wind, if the winds come in, so everything is ruined, right? It's running around, Rashi said, and gone. So what did he do? He combined several species, different type of food samples that is good for different animals together. So now, even they have a wind, it will stay. So what do you derive indirectly from that? So the idea is that since people combined it, he says, "Hachaname chazia ledugma." Since people use it to combine different things, so also you can mitztaref, you can hold them together for the liability of hotzah, of carrying. That's, by the way, the Rashi way of thinking. Tosfot earlier, he not going in this way, and so he hold that is just in a certain situation, but not all the time. In other words, he doesn't agree with that example as something that it's a something that you can compare to a general statement of combining together different measurement. Mishna. Hamotzi ochalim ki grogeret. If one carries out a measure of foods fit for human consumption, equivalent to what? To a grogeret. It's a very small dry fig bulk, right? It's the size of the dry fig, tiny, minute. Now, the Gemara said in Eruvin, it's halacha leMoshe Sinai. It's one that we believe a tradition from the earliest time of Sinai, given the Torah, that any type of food that good for human consumption, that in the minimum size of grogeret, so that's the minimum size. It's not the difference between this person or that person, this type of food or that type of food. Unlike a food for animals, that it's not a clear measurement for the different animals, because you cannot compare a camel to a goat. When it's come to people, it's all the same when it's come to people. So they said, Chayav, he's liable, umitztarfim. When it's come to people, to human consumption, you can combine them. Ze im ze bipnei sheshavu b'shir adam. You can combine a different human food to make the measurement of chiyuv, because they are all combined in a level of grogeret. In regard to animals, it's different, because it's different in a size to have them liable for carrying, so they cannot combine all of them. That's what Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina said in the previous Mishnah. He says that's excluding chutz miklipatam. That's not included the shell. Ve'gar'inehem ve'ukzehem. So the shell, because people don't use it for human consumption, right. So you cannot combine it for grogeret. גרעיניהם ועוקציהם. עוקציהם is like the tail of the... What?
Yeah, the stems.
The stems, like an etrog, right?
And the others pits.
Right.
Yep, so...
So the people don't use it, right? וסובן ומורסנן. And they coarse bran, right?
Refined bran, yeah.
Flour. So you cannot combine. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, all these shell can combine together, like the Tanakama said, חוץ מקליפי עדשין שמשבשלות עמהן. He said that except the shell of lanterns, which join together with the lanterns, comprise the measure for liability because they are cooked and eaten with them.
Right.
So they're coming together. Usually you make this lantern without taking off the shell.
Right, you just put the whole thing in. Yep.
So people do sometimes certain type of food, you can cook it or
whole, the way it is, whole. Yep.
GEMARA. Just short GEMARA. וסובן ומורסנן לא מצטרפים. So the Mishnah said that the bran and the coarse bran of the cereals did not join together. So they said, why you don't combine them with the dough? What's the reason? With the original flour. Ve'atnan, there is a Mishnah in Tractate Chala, chapter 2, חמשת רבעים קמח ועוד חייבים בחלה. The Torah obligated us to take part of the chala and to do a frashat chala from any type of isa when we're preparing the flour that it's in Eretz Israel, and we have to give it to the Kohen, right? So it's forbidden to others, and even for the Kohanim, they're allowed to eat the challah only when they are in state of purity. So anytime you hear about the chutz la'aretz, outside of Eretz Israel, is the Rabbanan. It's from the sages, okay? Now, the minimum is the way that they have manna in the midbar, that it was, the Torah said, asirit ha'efahi is 1/10 of ephah, is like 1 1/4 kav. So that's the minimum to do it. Now, he said here, חמשת רבעים קמח. If that dough that made for 5/4 of log of flours and bit more, so he said חייבים בחלה. It's obligated to do what? To have a chala separation. Hen, it's not just that. Hen וסובן ומורסנן. That includes them, which is their flours, their bran, and their coarse bran. So they're all joined together. The flour, their bran, and the coarse bran, they're all together to complete that size of the shiur. So why the Mishnah said that they had not combined together with the flour to complete the measurement in order to carry from one domain to another? So Amar Abaye, so Abaye said, שכן אני אוכל פיתו באיסה בלוסה. You see, the societal always has repeated itself so many times.
Yeah, but now it's changed. Now the people want to have raw flour instead of the refined.
Everything changed.
Yeah.
But you get to the historical point of the social measurement and life of people.
Yep.
That because most of the people are not well, and it says, since poor people eats his loaf made from a dough mixed with bread, so it's not something that is selected and it's a top quality. Yeah. So therefore it's enough, because the Torah said v'haya be'ochelchem milechem haaretz, then it came to pass when you eat from the bread of the land. So that's basically applied to everyone, including poor people, the Ritva said. Now you have to see that Mishnah, because that Mishnah tells us that if you combine it with others, it cannot be combined. But anyway, here we go by the most of the people. In regard to Shabbat, you cannot put liability only for food that is considering ochel chashuv.
Right.
Some, substantial food.
Mm-hmm.
Something that most of the people eat, and this type of food, burn and all of that, it's not something that most of the people eats. That's, by the way, the Rashi and the Ritva. The Tosfot disagree. He said that after it was cooked, so it's the same as others. Anyway, it's all question how you take that for in regard to many other things like kezait matzah in the eve of Passover, or eating a forbidden food and all of that. Sfat Emet has a long discussion over that. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, we learn in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says, חוץ מקליפי עדשים המתבשלות עמהם, except for the shell of lentils, because they are cooked and eaten with them. So the Gemara asked, עדשים אין פולין לא? So you said that lentil, yes, the shell do join together, but the beans, no, they do not. Ve'atanya, we learn in a Braita, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda said all these shells will not combine, chutz miklipei polin ve'adashim, except for the shells of beans and lentils. So you see in the Braita clearly that Rabbi Yehuda holds that even a shell of polim, it can be combined. So they said, lo kasht, yeah, it's not difficult. Ha bechadetei ha ba'atikei. This is referring to a fresh beans, to a new one. And the other one, that Mishnah, it's referred to old beans. So if it's old beans, so only old bean, klipot adashim, you can combine to hotzah, but not klipot polin. Atikei mai ta'amalo. Why do the shell of old beans not combine together? Amar Rabbi Abar said, mipnei shenir'in ki zvuvin bakara. I see that you're laughing already. Because
because it makes sense.
Yes, because the shell fragments looks like flies in a dish.
And no one wants to eat flies. Yep.
It's turn dark.
Yep.
And if you cook them with the shell, it looks like there's a fly running around, and so people don't do that. People don't combine it. That's, by the way, Rabbeinu Hananel. The Ritva hold, and the others said that people usually take it off before. Rabbeinu Yonatan and Mukhe Yosef said that sometimes they become old while they are dry, and therefore people just push them and make them a very small, tiny.
Make them into a mash, kind of like refried beans. Like
yes, people are repulsed by those shell fragments and do not eat. Basically, either they discard them. So the shell cannot combine to complete the shiur and to have this chiyuv, the liability of hotzah, of carrying. Hadran alach klal gadol. We just complete one of the most important prakim in Tractate Shabbat. This is a fundamental principle of Tractate Shabbat. So we established the whole idea of the 39 category of prohibited labors on Shabbat, primary category of primary labor, and others that deriving from that primary out, and a special attention we paid for the primary category of people who have hotzah of carrying out. And we said that that you have to have a minimum. That's our session today. That is a minimum to make a substantial carrying, especially if it's a combination of more than one. Hotzaat ma'achalei beima. The Rambam, Hilchot Shabbat, chapter 18, dealing with carrying out animal food. The measures of liability for carrying out food for various animals into public domain are as they appear in the Mishnah, which is basically very said a tzak, a gamal, a milk, metale, etc. And that's basically codified in halacha fully with no changes for forever. Achila al yedei hadchak, eating under duress is considered eating. This is the accepted halacha because according to various reading of the Rambam and the opinion of Rav Oshaya, the halacha is according to Rav Oshaya, dispute of Rabbi Yochanan. Mitztarfin lakal shebahem, joined together with the substances among them whose status is more lenient. With regard to type of animal food, those type whose measure for liability is smaller can join together with other type whose measure for liability is larger. That's what Rav Yossi said. Shi'ur hotza'at ochalim, the measure of food for the prohibition of carrying. One who carries out food items fit for human consumption on Shabbat is only liable if he carried out a dry fig bulk of that food, which is shells, seeds, and other inedible parts are not included in the calculating that measure. Shi'ur chala, the measure of dough from which one is obligated to separate chala, is a little more than 5/4 of a log of flour, which is the equivalent of a bit more than 43.5 eggs. Bran and coarse bran are also factors into calculation that measure, and that's your idea, Shulchan Aruch Idea 324.
So I have a question, practically.
Yes,
so what about, for instance, if you have garbage in your house and you need to take it outside, so you need to transfer it from your private domain to either a Carmelite or a public domain
in order to take it out. Can you do that on Shabbat, or is that...
If you have no eruv.
You have no eruv, right. So, and say it's, a condominium or something, so as soon as you leave it, you're either in Carmelite or B'shur HaRabim.
And it's carry odor or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's bad garbage. It's, that you don't want in the house any longer. It's making the house not so nice for Shabbat.
Let's elaborate on that for a second because it's a good question. In general, there is a concept that's called muktzeh mechamad gufo, that you don't transfer out of one domain to another,
right.
Period. If it's carry a bad odor, we allow a person to go and carry it if there is eruv. So a trace scenario, if you live like in Israel or other places that they have a public center of a big trash place,
mm-hmm.
and you carry from your private domain to public domain, but
it's an eruv.
It's an eruv spot. We don't wish to, but if it's carry bad odor, go ahead and put it there. Fine. Places that have no eruv, the best suggestion is just put it outside of the door of the apartment or house that you live.
But isn't that still, if it's an apartment, the hallway would probably be like Carmelite, so even putting it outside the door, isn't that then still transferring it from
B'shur Yachid to a Carmelite?
Depend how far is it. If it's a doorway, Carmelite is basically, if you remember, we talk about outside, but I'll say, if you can put it in 2 or 3 trash bags.
Or put it somewhere in the house where it doesn't bother people and something like that, yeah. So really there's no, okay.
I don't see how. The only thing I said, it's possible if even looks like in a category of muktzeh mechamad gufo, in the place that you have an eruv, you can go out and put it outside. But if it's not...
So now let me ask another question now. So what about where most of the houses here, if you're in a private house and you own the property, but there's generally not a fence around the property. So is the property still considered Rishur Yachid, or is it...
I'll say this. Here, because of our city and our area, it's so weird and so different, and every development has different rules. you have to go specifically to each case and show me specifically, and then we see it together, because it's a very, very delicate situation. You have development that they have fences around each property, they have development that they share.
But I'm just saying, just a regular neighborhood where most of them in the United States don't have fences around the property, but the person owns the property, but there's no fences. They just... The
best case scenario, you just put it outside of your door.
Yeah, but
I mean, Shabbos is over, you put it.
But what would you consider that? I mean, generally the land outside the house, is that more like Carmelit then? Because it's not really Reshut Harabim and not really Reshut Yachid. I mean, it's sort of a...
It's dependent on the size and dependent what's involved there. But as I said, in general, the best case scenario is just make an Eruv and you solve these issues. But if you don't have an Eruv, still you just put it outside the door. That's the best situation. Or maybe you, if it's current, event happened too many times, prepare a very big, heavy trash place next to your door. Make sure that it's closed properly, and just pull it out of your place and put it outside the door, and that's it. But
so how high does a fence have to be around your property in order to consider that?
Remember we discussed.
Right. I mean, I remember. I just can't remember the height. Height of the fence.
We said basically we holding the sense that you remember the measurement that we said 4x4. The basic.
So 10 tfachim or
the 10 tfachim. We're talking again when we divided between two domains. You remember, for example, when you talk about Carmelit within Reshut Harabim.
Right.
But other than that, I will say this: all of those questions of Muktzeh Mechamad Gufo that we basically try not to carry. The best case scenario, I keep saying that if you make your plan accordingly, so you avoid all these things.
So you don't have to do it. Okay. Thank you.
es Hashem